Part 2 of Chapter 4. Haile Selassie I is the only person to address both the League of Nations and the UN in the capacity of head of state. In 1949, at the fourth sitting of the General Assembly, Haile Selassie I addressed a packed chamber on the 20th of September. Haile Selassie I considered UN man's last hope of maintaining world peace. Here's his speech, quote, "The League of Nations failed basically because of its inability to prevent aggression. But neither the depth of that failure nor the intervening catastrophes could dull the perception of the need and the search for peace through collective security. So it is that here in the United Nations, we have dedicated ourselves anew to those high and indeed essential ideals, essential if the world is to continue on to the path of peace." End quote. This speech was the opening of the third seal, Revelation 6:5-6. "And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, 'Come and see.' And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, 'A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine.' And the month that this treaty was signed, the organs of the UN, WHO, the World Health Organization, and FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, echoed, quote, 'A measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny,' end quote. And the month that was signed is ruled by the scales, Libra, in astrology. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." The rider of the black horse, with these scales, the balances, in the palm of his hands, was Harry S. Truman. Soon after World War II was started the Cold War. Russia, America, and Great Britain, who were allies, held a meeting that became known as the Yalta Peace Talks. It was agreed that Russia should gain some advantage to countries like Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary, to name a few. Soon the Russians placed heavy restrictions on the Western visitors gaining dominance in an Eastern Europe. Harry S. Truman declared to those countries that assistance would be given to repel a communist encroachment and to keep Russia at bay. This political canon, spawned in 1947, became known as the Truman Doctrine. The pale horse, the Cold War, marches on. Communism and capitalism, East versus West, Russia against America, Sputnik, atom bombs, death and Hades, all of them, pale riders. The Cold War spread like a cancerous disease and soon infected Asia. North Korea invaded South Korea. Communism had been installed in the North, so America took the South, beginning the breaking of America's power of pride. War was being waged by the two primary contenders, using North and South Korea as pieces on a chessboard. When America put South under UN protection, the Chinese entered the war on the side of the North Koreans, called a ceasefire, bringing the war to a stalemate, the Korean War, agreeing to peace talks, ending the war mostly. In 1953, Dwight D. Eisenhower was made USA president. Historians say Russia genuinely were trying to avoid conflict with the USA. This puts blame partially back on America. It didn't really end until the Berlin Wall came down in 1989 and 1990-91. This makes Dwight D. Eisenhower the rider of the pale horse. In 1954, Haile Selassie I made a visit to America and gave a speech, the opening of the fourth seal. The speech emphasized the impossible pressures that are put on the smaller states by great powers. If the small states were to rid themselves of the superpowers, then the pale horse followed by death and Hades would be no more. He said, quote, "For the smaller state, foreign policy is the basis of its existence, since arms, by definition, cannot suffice to an end. We feel it important that the smaller states should be able to survive and make a contribution to world peace. It is certain that the basic support for the principle of collective security comes not the larger states, but from the smaller states, which have more to gain and lose by failure of its application. In this respect, it is significant that the smaller states involved in the UN efforts in Korea outnumbered the larger states." End quote. This proves conclusively that it is the major powers that are the cause of the continuing of wars on the planet. The four horsemen, the white, red, black, and pale, all spell out a message we must learn to make world peace a reality, and to understand why things are as they are today. Beginning the millennium of world peace, Revelations 20:1-3. It explains what our situation is, how the struggle began, and why. Jah will not force world peace. It is all happening to to teach us so we can understand and grow into it. The white horse was in 1916, the first seal. The red horse, 1936, the second seal. The black horse, 1949, the third seal. And the pale horse in 1954, the fourth seal, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, post-Korean War, the beast is a machine, no remorse, hungry for financial gain and power. On YouTube, see Catholics singing hymns to Lucifer, etc. In 1966, the Rastafarian movement had gotten big enough that Babylon was worried. So they figured out a plan. They arranged it so that Haile Selassie I would go to Jamaica on a visit. They figured when the Rastas see him, they will realize he is just a human. Of course, they did not know the real definition of who Jah incarnate, the Son, even is, a demigod. Au contraire, let's see what happened. On April 21st, 1966, the plane of Haile Selassie I was being awaited by many, many Jamaicans. It was raining all day, but nothing could stop the crowds. Then, suddenly, the rain stopped. Clouds parted as 7 white doves flew out. Then the plane became visible, a great bird, as it has been called in the Bible. When the plane landed, it stayed there as people chanted and prayed. We have all seen the video coverage of all this on YouTube. Everyone wanted to see their God, Jah. Then Haile Selassie I came out of the plane and saw all the Rastas. He burst into tears and returned back in the plane to pray. The police couldn't contain the crowd, so they asked the respected Mortimer Plano if he could create a space for the emperor, which he did. Then Haile Selassie I exited the plane, escorted by Mortimer. He went to the people, saying through an interpreter, "Holy priests and warriors are the dreadlocked Rastafari. I am he." Babylon's plans had failed. Instead of weakening the Rasta faith that he is Jah, it had become stronger. This day is still celebrated each year in Jamaica. Then Selassie I got into a car escorted by police and went to give his love to the movement. First, he went to George V Park, where he laid a wreath at the foot of the cenotaph in memory of the blood spilled for Ethiopia. He was there for 3 days. He met Sir Alexander Bustamante and many others, giving them white robes, 12 in all, to the Rasta brethren. The white robes are awards. Revelation 6, 9 through 11. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar of the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on earth? And white robes, so when he went to George V Park, and white robes were given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. And he himself was given a doctorate in law. Bob Marley couldn't make it that day, but his wife Rita went. And as he waved his hands for all to see, Rita saw the marks in his hands from the other incarnation on the same deity, Jah, when he was hung on the cross. This day was the opening of the 5th seal. From 1930, the coronation of Haile Selassie I begins the church era known as Philadelphia, in Revelations 3, 7 through 13. Philadelphia means the city of brotherly love. So it is the era that births Rastafarianism. And this era ends in 1975. 1975 is when Haile Selassie I, who was said to be a Mason, disappeared from history. At 83 years old, he was the last king of a 3,000-year-old dynasty of kings, the first king being the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This family is the tribe of Judah, like Jesus through Mary. Somewhere between 1975 and 1976, he disappears after a coup of students took over the throne, ending the line of kings with Haile Selassie I. We can imagine him ascending to heaven like the Lorax, separating from his body. This, in 1975, was the opening of the 6th seal and began the next era, the church in Laodicea. 1976, the earth saw some of the worst earthquakes, one killing over 2,000. This seal is all about the harm the beast Babylon has done to the earth. It describes it from the perspective of Jesus and John the Revelator. Actually, it is Jesus repeating the prophecy of Daniel of the Old Testament. He talks of the pollution, blood-red moon, and in the daytime that it would be so bad that the sky would be dark with smog blocking the sun, etc. Child playing with leopard, Isaiah 11, 6 and 7, like with Steve Irwin or Mark Marks, etc. Today, 2019, we are still worse in this era, Laodicea. It will end when disciples burn incense, the warriors of the rainbow throne room. When Jesus, both Haile Selassie I and Jesus are the Lion of Judah, Jah, returns to Jerusalem.